Hey there. At this point, you have learned all about if statements, and you've read through this tutorial, and you've watched through the previous video, and you are familiar with the fundamentals of if statements and things like else if statements and else as well. And now you are ready to do this week's project. So the goal is to practice everything that you learned through a project that lets you sort of stretch your creative muscles and create something that's kind of personally meaningful to you. So the project GitHub is the place to start. So go to week 5 if statements and check out the description and notice that the requirements are here. You have you'll need to have 5 questions, 5 if statements, 5 else if statements, and 5 else statements, and you'll be creating a quiz. So the way I would start is by looking at the existing code that's in the repo. So the way I would do that is I would look at the code in exactly the same way that you've looked at the code for the previous weeks. I would open that up in your text editor. I'm going to use Atom, but you can use anything you want, including stuff like Replit. It's all good. I'm going to add the folder here so I can click around easily. Oh, it's the wrong folder. Let me open a different folder. Let me open the right folder here. Okay, that's the right folder for this week. And okay, so I'd start by looking at the index file and just kind of familiarizing yourself with the code in it and kind of how it works. So just kind of reading through it line by line will help, but I'll cover it kind of at a high level. So you have a div, looks like question 1 that asks, what's my favorite animal? And it has an input and a button that calls a function when you click it. Okay. And then it looks like there's another div that has another question with an input and then another button. And then it looks like it has another div down here with an ID of done. So it's 3 divs in total. And next I would maybe look at the styles.css file to look at the styles, and it looks like question 2 and done, those IDs are not displayed by default. Okay. And then I would look at the script file and read through this. Again, you can read through it line by line on your own. I won't do that on the video because it'll just be really boring to watch, but that's what I would recommend you do, is reading through the code line by line to really understand it. But it looks like at a very high level, submit answer 1 takes the first input element, gets an answer from it, and then uses an if statement to show different things depending on what the user actually typed. And I'll call attention to the hide and show functions here. And those are helper functions down here, which either show or hide an element in the HTML by changing its display property in the styling. So it's either none to hide it or block to display it again. If you're using something like Flexbox or Grid, you can change this to display of flex or display of grid, whatever. None hides it, anything else shows it. That's kind of how that magic works. So it looks like these functions, submit answer 1 and submit answer 2, get the input from the user, from the UI, and then use if statements to do different things. Okay, so now that we have some familiarity with the code, I would run it in your browser. So I'm going to double click that. And what's my favorite animal? Because first of all, because I'm me, I know what my favorite animal is. But you can look in the code to get a hint, or more than a hint, to get the right answer. But I would play with it a little bit. So like, what if I say turtle? What happens? And it looks like I get an alert dialog that says wrong, but then gives me a hint. Okay. And again, you can see how this works by reading through the code line by line. And that's this else statement here, and just giving a hint. So maybe I'll type dog instead, done, and I get a different message. And so all of that is coming from this if else block here. So finally, I'll type cat, which I know happens to be the right answer. So I'm going to click done here, and it says that's right, and I click OK. And now I get a different question. And the way this is working is through that show and hide function that I talked about earlier. So you can dig through the code in more detail if you want more information, or you can just kind of use it without really reading through it. But whatever. Long story short is that it calls hide of the first div and then show with the second div. So I get the second div, which contains a button that calls submit answer to. So you're mapping your JavaScript to your HTML and vice versa. So same kind of idea in submit answer to. Depending on the answer that you give, you will get a different like behavior based on the if statement. One thing I'll point out is that this HTML uses a number input, so I can't type like cat in here. Nothing happens. I have to type a number. And I click done, and it'll say the answer is lower or higher depending on what my number is. And I happen to know that it's 42 because I wrote the code. But I'm going to click done, and it says that's right, and I got it right. And now it says thanks for taking my quiz. Okay, so that is the existing code. That's how the existing web page works. And so now the assignment is to take these ideas of if statements and else if and else, and make your own quiz. This quiz started with 2 questions, but I'm asking you to have a total of 5 questions. And you can, remind yourself of what the requirements are in the repo here. But it's 5 questions using if, else if, and else. And the rest, honestly, is up to you. So if you want to make a quiz about yourself, that's great. If you want to make a quiz about your favorite TV show or book or, anything else, totally up to you. I'll also say that the way my quiz works is it asks kind of one question at a time, and you're free to, keep with that format where once I click done, it shows whether I'm right or not, and then gives me the next question. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can show them all at once, or you can show different things, whatever. As long as you have the required 5 questions, 5 if statements, 5 else if, and 5 else statements. I don't care if you have 1 if statement with 5 else if statements, and then 4 if statements without them, and maybe just 1 with 1 each with an else statement. It's all good. Any combination of any of the above is totally fine, as long as you have all of the requirements. So if you want to do something like, instead of showing hints like I do, maybe you show a score at the end. So you let users get the questions wrong. That's all good too. So it's kind of up to you how you want your quiz to work. The way I would maybe start is by probably modifying the existing code just for question 1. So right now it says, what's your favorite animal? And then it takes the input from the input element and then processes it in the submit answer 1 function. So I would maybe start by modifying this function to change your answer, change the question, all that, and get that working first, and then decide on those questions that I was talking about earlier. So do you want to show a hint, or do you want to do something like, I don't know, have a score variable that you keep track of, or maybe some combination of all of the above. Or maybe even something like, depending on your answer to question 1, you show a different question for question 2. All of that's kind of possible with if statements and else if statements and else's. But yeah, all of it is kind of up to you as long as you have the requirements. So take the existing code as examples, but feel free to delete it, start with a different thing, customize it. You're not tied to this format at all. So yeah, that's how it started this week's project. As always, of course, let me know as you have questions, or if you want to just chat about anything, I am more than available. So please reach out. But until then, I'll say good luck, and I'm really excited to see all your quizzes and all your questions and stuff. All right, have fun.